introduce you to our panelists. Would you love to come down, ladies? First, I want to introduce Francine Courtois, who you saw in the film. All over the world with a focus on developing new contraceptive technologies that give women more autonomy. In 2014, returning from Africa, where she observed women buying abortion pills over the counter to self-manage their abortions and encountering the abortion clinics in the state of Texas shut down because of restrictions and bans going into effect, Francine and her co-directors, who you saw in the film, established Plan C, dedicated to expanding access to medication abortion. I'd also love to introduce you to Tracy Gross-Trager. Tracy's documentary work includes Rich Hill, which won the Grand Jury Prize for US Documentary at the 2014 Sundance Film Festival, Abortion, Stories Women Tell, and powerful film which you must all watch, and Be Good, Smile, Creed, an Emmy Award-winning documentary about grief and healing of survivors of the Vietnam War. Welcome, Tracy. I would also like to welcome Jess Jacobs. She is gorgeous. She's an award-winning actor, writer, producer, and abortion rights activist. She's also the executive and impact producer for Plan C Film. Her work has screened at Cannes, Sundance, South by Southwest, Tribeca, SIFT, and can be found on Hulu, Paramount Plus, Stars, and more. Jess co-founded the creative production company Invisible Pictures, was named one of Real Leaders magazine's 100 Visionary Leaders, and received the Future is Female Award from ICFP. Next, I'd like to bring Alison Regan, who you met before this meeting. She's the president of the Board of Trustees. Founded in 2009 after the assassination of George Taylor, the clinics provide abortion care in underserved communities so that all people can make their own decisions about their health care. Alison has served on the board since 2019 and has been a long-time activist for reproductive rights. As a former policy officer for the Pacific Institute for Women's Health, her work focuses on new technologies to help women in developing countries control their reproductive lives. She also served as an organizer for the Women's March in Los Angeles. And I'd also like to introduce Emiliana Guerrero. Come on down, Emiliana. Emiliana is an activist, feminist, entrepreneur, and president of the Women's March Foundation, which you found, Taxi, in 2016, and is the driving force behind the 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021 official Women's March in Los Angeles. Hands up if you went to one or all of those. Maybe 2020, I can understand. Emiliana devotes much of her time to advocacy for women's rights, Latino education, and gender equality. In 2020, Emiliana launched Women's March Action, the political arm of Women's March Foundation. Personally, Emiliana is proud to serve her Latin community and has also built roots in the Jewish community as she raises her family in the Jewish faith. So welcome to all these ladies. Thank you so much for being here today. I want to kick it off with Tracy. Let's talk about the timeline for making Plan C. When did you begin, and did you factor in the impending Dobbs decision in your production timeline while following all the people featured?
Well, I would just like to say that, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much to Repro Film and Trust Women, and also Vidians for having us here. This is a really great space to support independent film. This is an independent film. So there was no green light and no big vision of oh, you have this much money to spend and this much time. So it really just started with a kernel of, okay, there's these Kavanaugh hearings happening and they're pretty bad, and it looks like the writing might be on the wall that Roe will be overturned. But is that really going to happen? Will that really, RBG still there? And anyway, so did I know that Dobbs was going to be overturned? No, but it looked like the writing was on the wall. So I started in 2018 with research, and then it turned out that Francine lives 20 minutes from my house. I reached out to her I did research, what are folks doing to prepare for potentially Roe being overturned? And just in that research, I learned about the work of Plan C and all they were doing around online provisioning of abortion medication through the mail. It seemed like a paradigm shift after the time that I spent in abortion clinics documenting how hard it often is to access care there. So I was really excited to meet Francine, and I was like, well, she should have a documentary made about her work, and that was kind of what started way back in 2018.
Well, what a small world, 20 minutes down the road. I mean, it is LA after all.
Well, thankfully, although this film took us to 14 states and we traveled many places.
Yes, you certainly did. You covered the miles. Well, Francine, the phrase good trouble comes to mind when I learned about your story in this film. I'm sure we all think much of the same too. And the work your team and other similar organisations are doing right now across the country in a landscape that is not only hostile but literally using criminalisation as a tool to regulate a healthcare procedure, which is absurd to think about. What motivates you to keep going in this landscape?
Oh, the people you met in the movie, the people you met in the film, the people that are here today, you guys, that's the motivation. The people who are willing to stand up and fight these unjust laws. And you see the intrepidness of so many people, and it continues. And that is the beauty of what Tracy has done with this film, is to give us some really good news during some really bad times. Right now, when it comes to abortion access, it's pretty bad news. It's dire news constantly, except for all the work that's been done by these intrepid providers. So really the motivation is the number of people who are willing to stand up, who get caught between what they know they need to do and what they, as providers, clinicians have sworn they would do, and then these laws, and then wanting to try to stay legal, and yet having, the conscious provision was the word was used, people standing up, and there's a lot happening even today that wasn't in the movie, that was just beginning to be talked about. We can talk about later. Thank you.
Yeah, I was so in awe of all the doctors who were willing to, put themselves on the front lines and go that extra mile for patients, because it's super important. One of the things you emphasise is the importance of information. Can you talk about the value of information Plan C is sharing in a landscape that has seen misinformation and disinformation become the basis for some horrendous anti-abortion laws and court cases throughout the years?
I think Loretta Ross said it beautifully. She said the most important thing is for people to, if you don't know what your options are, if you aren't knowledgeable about what's out there, you can't access it. If you don't know your rights, you can't use your rights. So I think the importance of information, I know it was a joke, but I meant it when I said, the most important thing is to be educated and to know. And these egregious laws that started with SB 8 in Texas saying, aiding and abetting, now anybody who tells somebody sharing information was now criminalizing. That was the beginning. We see DeSantis doing it now on all sorts of issues that are beyond ridiculous, beyond egregious. So yes, information. Plan C right now has two major missions. One is to continue to make access available to these pills, and the second is to spread the word, let people know they have these options, and that's where you can come into play. Everybody has a responsibility to let others know that there are options out there. Do not believe the news that tell you that abortion is no longer available in whatever state they tell you it's not. It's not true, and it's your responsibility to let people know that's not true.
You're on the record, you all heard it here tonight. Jess, as the executive producer and impact producer of Plan C, can you share more about your role in amplifying the film in a big way? You screened at Sundance earlier this year, and congrats, that's a huge stage, and why an impact strategy matters for a film like this right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Francine just did my job, because the goal of the film really is about information sharing, and one of the things that Tracy and I spoke about when we first met, and Tracy already started working on the film, was This is not a Change Hearts and Minds film. It might, and that would be wonderful, but it really is a rallying the troops film. It is really like get the information out to the folks that are on our sides, because the reality is that most Americans believe that access to abortion should be available, it should be safe, it should be legal. I think the latest statistic is 75 to 80% of Americans. I don't think that there's anything else that 80% of Americans agree on, maybe the sky is blue.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's the one.
That's not even. But just to say, this actually is not as divisive of an issue as it's made out to be in a lot of the sort of political rhetoric and political sphere. So anyway, all to say that the film itself is really a tool to rally the troops. And so as Francine said, do please share about it, do please share about Plan C, do please share about the abortion pills and their availability. And I think that that's why the Impact campaign matters so much, because of the restrictions that you were hearing about as far as social media and some of what's being sort of restricted, the information is being restricted and taken down for reasons that we can all speculate about, I'm sure. Tracy and I have also had a really interesting ride getting distribution for the film. People have pretty unanimously loved it, which again is extremely rare in Hollywood, and have not been as willing to take the leap to distribute it on their platforms as we would have expected.
Unanimously rejected it.
Unanimously rejected, basically. We have one, anyway, we do have distribution. We will be going to theaters, most likely we can get our deal done and we'll be on a streaming platform. But anyway, without going into the details, it remains tricky to break through the mainstream. And so the Impact campaign, the partnerships with groups like Trust Women and Rebirth Film are the way that the film is going to get seen and the information is going to get out there, along with all the incredible work that all the providers and organizations are doing.
Well, speaking about the majority of people who support abortion access, Jess and Tracy, can you, beyond the incredible support of film that we've seen from the Rebirth community and beyond, like you said, what has been the reaction from others? Have you had any pushback or backlash in any way? And if so, how do you, as filmmakers, potentially prepare or deal with this?
I mean, I'll start just by saying that this is a question that we've gotten before at both South by and at Sundance. We were asked about our safety and whether we were, allowed to show the film, and some folks have reached out since asking if they're allowed to show the film in states that restrict it. So, I think it's something that, as of right now, as Tracy has said, they're banning books, but they're not banning films yet. So we are still taking the film around, but folks are definitely asking that question.
And we were taking precautions for folks in the film who were most vulnerable. So some folks, could not show their faces because they are in places where they're more likely to be criminalized. But we felt their voices were important, and so we wanted to include them just the same. But, it's a hard line between making sure that we include the voices we want to include and also not putting anyone in harm's way, unfortunately, in this climate. So, you navigate it as best you can. So we did a lot of blurring, but we didn't hide the fact that we were blurring. That became kind of part of the story, unfortunately. But, so.
It just goes to show you how much is at risk and what's at stake right now, that doctors who are doing this work have to, really protect their identity for the sake of patients and filmmakers as well. So thank you both for going out of your way to do that. That's really important. Well, Alison, I want to jump down to you. Talk about clinics. The clinics where people access care around the country are the front lines for the battle for abortion access, have been for at least a decade. We see protests outside clinics. Being the president of the Trust Women Board, can you share more about how the organisation has had to readjust to new laws in states where you're located?
Yeah, I think, one word that we've been using more often than ever has been pivot. We've become really good at pivoting very quickly. And I will say that one of the benefits of being an independent, small clinic, we don't have the backing of a Planned Parenthood, but we're also able to make decisions more quickly and be a little bit more nimble, and we have had to be very, very nimble. You know, Dobbs was certainly crushing for all of us, but quite honestly, when we're practicing in Oklahoma and Kansas, we feel like we've been kind of in a post-row world for a long time. And then when SB 8 came down, everything really changed with SB 8. And we found our clinics in Oklahoma City and Kansas just suddenly inundated with more patients than we've ever seen. And so we immediately hired more staff. And I will say, you know, as difficult and dangerous as this work can be, we have had more doctors than ever want to work with us. So our physicians and staff, they are true heroes. They will tell you they're tired of being called heroes. They don't want to have to be heroes anymore because this is just healthcare to them. But they are stepping up in greater numbers than ever before. And so I think, and the other thing that we learned to do is build coalitions and advocate. And so the political landscape has really changed in a way that I don't think these far-right Republicans ever anticipated. So we got to work immediately to beat back this ballot measure, because in Kansas, there's a constitutional right in our state constitution. We have our own brokers of to a Democratic governor. It's a very strange, an awful AG, but in any event, they immediately put a ballot measure on the ballot to undo that constitutional right. Well, lo and behold, 70% of Kansans said no. They kept that constitutional right, that's right. And so that work on the ground was really eye-opening, because you realize the people want abortion rights and their representatives don't represent them. So we have to get more political, and so I feel like that's the next step. Expand access, fight, take the fight to them, be more active and less reactive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of building coalitions, Amelia, I'll hand you my mic in a minute. As someone who has championed reproductive rights through the Women's March Foundation, how have you and your team been preparing for this post-Roe reality we're living in, and what is the role of foundations like Women's March right now?
I think our role is to truly be partners, and not just partners where it's convenient, like in California, right? So we were part of that Kansas coalition, and making sure that we had language correctly, that folks wanted to talk about reproductive rights, that folks wanted to go out and vote, but more than that, abortion is a winning issue. So we've got to push everyone to put it on the fucking ballot.
Yes.
Put it on the fucking ballot, and we will bring out and mobilize these voters. That's what we did in Kansas. This is what we plan on doing in Ohio. Because when it's on the ballot, it's a winning issue. We also have to truly fight back on these politicians that are even on our side. Don't just run on this issue. I need you to do more. I need you to just not run on this issue. So I think that once we push back politically, that is the only way they will listen. Think about this week. All we heard was about a submarine. And then it starts to pop. Oh, it's the year anniversary where everybody was out there talking about it. I'm like, no, what have you done? What are you doing? So I'll leave it at that.
Francine, I love the F-bomb that you dropped in the film, that's great. For many years, advocates, activists, and experts like you have been sounding the alarm, especially when it comes to criminalisation of not just abortion, but all sorts of issues relating to bodily autonomy, especially for Black and brown women and marginalised folks. Can you share some insight into how criminalisation is already impacting the people you work with, and what steps are you taking to protect them?
I think this was already referred to. These communities, post-Roe has existed in our country for decades. And these communities, the communities of Black, brown, LGBT, poor, rural, you name it, those communities have been discriminated against now for years. And they know discrimination. It's not new to them. So back to the point of partnering with these folks to hear and help them share the word in their own communities in the way that makes the most sense. one of the things about sharing information is, especially around something as stigmatized and political as abortion, it matters a lot as to who the messenger is. And so we are working really hard with, Plan C has a big new initiative that is working with partners on the ground, grassroots organizations that have been already mentioned here, where they are the ones who are developing the message, deciding whether it's gonna be radio ads or billboards or how they're going to develop that message. And when necessary, when they feel like they can't put their name on it because they're going to get slammed because of these laws, we put our name on it, but it has been developed and is being promoted by the communities themselves. So, I mean, the criminalization is not new to these communities. There are ways we can protect them and help them protect themselves by being educated about what their rights are and what to do to prevent getting criminalized.
Yeah, absolutely. I might also just add with that, something that Loretta talked about, which is sort of everyone taking a kind of a threat assessment. Because, part of the tactic of anti-abortion efforts is confusion and fear. And so what is the real threat, and and I think, every person, every community has to do that for themselves, but to make sure that they have the information. So that's part of, you don't withhold the information, but you provide all the information, and then it's up to folks to do a threat assessment about, their lives and what they can risk, but,
Yeah, I love what she said about that. That was really powerful. Well, Francine, thankfully there are great pro-choice legislators also working on to ensure access to abortion in various states. Can you talk about a piece of legislation that we should know about right now?
Yes, let me ask, Sochi, are you here? Here she comes.
Yay.
I would like to give the mic to Sochi, and she will describe one of the legislators that these groups are working on. Thank you so much.
Hello, welcome.
Hello, hi.
Introduce yourself.
Sochi Lopez Ayala, I'm she, her pronouns, and I'm the Policy Advocacy Coordinator for Access Reproductive Justice, which is California's abortion fund. So the Access Reproductive Justice is a part of a coalition called the California Future Abortion Council, which after SB 8, as we saw a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation, and so our organization, along with 40 others, came together to create a list of recommendations of how we can create California to be a reproductive freedom state. And so what we did with those recommendations in the fall is we passed legislation last year. So last year we ran 15 bills to the legislature to help increase abortion access, help increase folks traveling to California for abortion access, as well as create a website, California abortion.ca.gov. So if folks are Googling where can I get an abortion, a government website will come up to let them know that we are a freedom state. And then we also had Prop 1, we get out and vote, we enshrine it in the Constitution. And then this year we're refocusing on SHIELD laws, which, as was mentioned in the film, really protects providers. And it also helps providers who are also giving gender-affirming care through telemedicine. And so how organizations like Plan C in telemedicine and pill providing work with Access Reproductive Justice, my organization, I should say ours because we're here for you, is folks will call us like, hey, I need access to pills, they're this amount of money, I have made this amount, and so we provide that funding, that gap period. And so to know the impact of Dobbs falling last year, we provided almost $500,000 for callers in the past year. And so that seems like a lot of money, but there are callers who we can't fund everything. And we look at it as it's love that we're giving people. We're giving people love through access to abortion care, how even make their own decisions. And I believe, Casey, you had a point also, sorry, I probably went over my
Information.
There was a moment where it was talking about folks having to travel, and where are they going? We've had folks that they travel across state lines, we put them up in a hotel, and they take their pills, they'll leave the next day. But like that isolated experience that they're having to have is what we're really fighting for, is to not have them do that and let them have a self-managed abortion in their own home. And there's lots of resources out there of how you can reach out and let people know that, hey, I'm a safe person you can talk to about abortion access, and if you wanna have a self-managed abortion, let me bring you a heating pad, let me watch a movie with you, let me bring you some dinner. And so things like that, just that comfort is really what it's all about, and the SHIELD laws just really protect everybody, yeah, legally.
Thank you so much, Ochi. The SHIELD laws, let me just explain because it's very important and it's the next big thing that's happening. One just passed in New York State on Friday. It's the 5th, I believe, state that has passed this, and California, and Xochitl is talking about a law that is gone through the Assembly or the Senate, correct me if I'm wrong, and then it needs to pass the Assembly, but it's gonna happen soon. But what it does is it allows these providers that you saw who are living in these states that have a law on the books that says, I will shield you if you provide quality care that we believe people have a right to, like gender affirming care or abortion care, in another state. So that means that a provider in California, once the SHIELD law passes in California, can be shipping to Texas, to Florida, and helping work, with the Trust Women clinics. They can do anything and will be shielded from prosecution by the state of Texas, who comes and says, we want to extradite this person because they're breaking laws in our state. The most important part in my mind of these, of using these SHIELD laws to break really this egregious vision of the fact that we are no longer a single country, that we have these borders that literally determine whether or not you have a human right, depending on whether you step over that line, you have a human right, you step back over this line, you don't have a human right. This is the part that has to be stopped. And these SHIELD laws are what are going to allow us to adjudicate these ridiculous laws and take them to the Supreme Court so they can be addressed. Because as long as they stay there, the fear and the obstacles that get created, both in terms of the providers who dare say, Uber drivers who dare or dare not, it's gotten ridiculous as to how fearful everybody is based on these really egregious, I really believe, laws that would not stand if they ever really get adjudicated. So SHIELD laws are really, really important. They're the next thing, and we're already now, as of 2 weeks ago, in a place where these providers that you saw, most of them, are now shipping to all states.
Did you want to? Okay.
I do want to acknowledge though that there are a couple of other people that worked on the film here that are in the audience, so I want to say
Yes, absolutely,
there's
please.
Emily Topper is in the audience, I think, who is one of the DPs here. Lloyd Hall is here, who did the sound design, and so, films are made by a collaboration of a lot of people. So we had a lot of people coming together to make this happen.
Yes.
And are grateful to those that are.
Well, we're grateful for all of your teammates. Alex and I were just talking about looking through the credits and just seeing it really takes a village to put an indie film like this together. So it's, it's important for all of us to support and get this information out there. Well, I have a few more questions before we wrap up and open it up to the audience. Alison, I want to pass it back to you. We see so many viral videos of people arguing with anti-choice folks outside clinics, and it can create confusion. Although I love a good TikTok video about, Gen Z going after, these boomers, that's great, but it also makes clinicians work harder. So what are the best ways for us to support Trust Women right now, and what do clinics need to be able to best help patients?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think as an independent clinic, I think honestly one of the best ways to support is to donate. And being a monthly donor is especially important for us so that we have a little bit more we can plan more readily in advance because we know what our revenue is gonna be. And I would also say support abortion funds. You know, now that patients are having to travel so much farther, abortion has become exponentially more expensive, and so those funds are becoming even more critical. I would also say volunteer, and if you have friends in these states where we practice, encourage them to volunteer, be a patient escort. Those are needed now more than ever. And I would also say, you know, especially if you have friends in these states, run for something. Get out there. We need, so often, there are no Democrats running for these state offices, and those have been neglected for too long. And so support politicians, support representatives who are going to support abortion rights in these states where there are currently bans.
And trustwomen.org, they can go to trustwomen.
Trustwomen.org, yes. Thank you.
Emiliana, can you share some action items that Women's March Foundation has got going on that people can join, or anything in the pipeline that we can support when it comes to abortion access and reproductive rights?
Well, I'd like to offer Plan C. So one of the things that when we started, when Roe fell, we had sort of a hotline. We were the only Women's March group with a phone number. And so folks were asking us, folks were calling in Spanish, what do we do, where do we go? We ended up going to Mexico and finding an underground railroad that would be able to send posts to Texas. Out of their living room, I mean, I went out there and talked to them. So part of it is information and sharing information, but also watching out for disinformation. Our big thing right now is our Digital Divas program. For example, today we have 3 programs and they all got reported as being canceled or misinformation because they are out there seriously trying to stop women from having their rights and even talking about it. So that's part of it. So I would say yes, volunteer, yes, donate, but more than anything, pass the information on, right? Pass the information on. For example, the Auntie Network is another one. They're like, we don't know what to do. And I'm like, okay, let's figure out how we all work together in coalitions. We may not be doing it right. They may be, let's figure out how to work together instead of, just saying, well, I'm not with so-and-so, I don't think they're the best group. Guess what? We are all the best group to know what we want with our bodies. So let's start there. So I'm gonna say volunteer, donate, but definitely pass on information. And if you see posts that is disinformation on Plan C, on abortion rights, flag it. Because we're getting flagged for passing out true information.
And there are stickers out front. So you can grab a bunch of stickers too, by the flowers by the bar. I think
I think you
turned
have
this
to
off.
press the button.
There you go.
I turned it on, sorry.
Why? So, yeah. You can stickers there. I'm also getting a bunch of stickers to share information, accurate information about,
That's what the Plan C website is. It's won awards, it's amazing. We work really hard to keep it up to date. It's where you go if you did a drop-down menu and you say, I'm in Oklahoma, how do I get pills? What do I know? What do I need to know? How do I need to know my legal folks? Who are the partners working? What's going on in Oklahoma? That's all on the Plan C website. So please, let people know and it'll be correct.
But I love what you said about it. It's sort of, it takes all lanes, it takes all of it. So don't be paralyzed, just do something. If it's just take a sticker and put it on a toilet somewhere infrequent for coffee.
And any one of those websites will be referring to the other. So that's the other piece. We are really working together. These resources are all on each website. So depending on what you need to know, you will be able to get the right information if you go to any one of our websites.
Yeah, absolutely. Put those stickers in the Gideon's goggles. That was great. Tracy and Jess, I want to end on you both. What message do you want audiences like us to take away after watching this film? And what ways do you hope people will take action?
I mean, for me, the most important thing is, yes, it's about access to abortion, it's about human rights, it's about gender affirming care, it's about all the things that we should have access to and how we can take care of ourselves when unjust laws are passed. But I think also just sort of fundamentally, it's about what is possible when people come together. You know, right now, there are laws that need to be passed, and those are very important. But there's also sort of very real stuff that people individually can do. And I think for me, that was the most inspiring thing, is that you don't have to wait necessarily to vote. You need to vote, that's very important. But also there are things right now, today, that you can do to help each other, to help yourself, to help your community. And so that, I hope, is the message that can be passed along to those who watch the film. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, everything that Tracy has said, and I know there's so many sort of messages and things sort of swirling around in the film, but in 2023 to have a movie about abortion access that feels hopeful is such a gift. It's such a beautiful thing, and I think we see that hope in the Kansas vote, we see that hope in the Kentucky vote that followed, and in Prop 1 passing, and Montana, and Michigan. Like, we've just seen we've had some amazing wins. The feminists are winning, and so, you know, I think this film really centers that, and that's a big takeaway. And I think the other thing that I would just plug, you heard a little bit about advanced provision in the film, but if you can afford it, or you know anybody in your life who can afford it, you are able to get these pills before you're pregnant. You can keep them in your medicine cabinet for up to 2 years. You can, again, do your own risk assessment in terms of banned states, but you can share them with folks in your community, should somebody that you know need them. I have them, I know Tracy has them, I'm sure.
Send your kids off to college with them,
Yes.
all those things.
Yeah, so I just sort of would flag that, and you can find access to those pills on fancypills.org.
Well, on behalf of Repro Film, I want to thank each and every one of the panelists here today. Can we have another round of applause? That plan to see screenings in Kansas and Los Angeles, and a huge thank you to Vivian for having us. Thank you so much. I would also like to invite you all to join the Repro Film community by signing up for our free monthly periodical at reprofilm.org. It's all about sharing information. You can also follow us on Instagram at reprofilm. Volume 18 will be released on July 1st, and you can take a look at our previous issues and interviews and bite-sized pieces of activism on the website, reprofilm.org. So thank you to all of you who came out today to support this amazing film and all these amazing leaders next to me. Many of us have entered this room with mixed feelings on the 1-year anniversary of the Dobbs decision, but I hope this film and everything that these women shared here today will leave you with hope and ways to take action. So thank you all, and thank you for coming today.